Hi, this is Rahman Sheikh. Welcome to Fortnightly Railway Transportation Systems Podcast. I am the host and railway systems specialist working in this industry for 24 years and counting. This podcast is primarily focused on railway experts who have vast amount of experience and contributed greatly to this amazing industry. This is not a technical seminar but focuses on feel good stories, individual journeys, their success and failures, motivating younger generation to kickstart their career in railways and creating a sense of pride for the railway people who devoted their lives on the most environment friendly public transportation. Our guest for this fortnight is Thijs Van Steen. Thijs is an experienced system integration leader. His main professional experience is the North South Metro line in Amsterdam that went into revenue service in 2018, where he was responsible for systems integration. After that, Thijs joined the Digital Systems program in Sydney, first as integration director and later as project director. Earlier this year, he and his family left Australia to return to Netherlands, his home country. Thijs now supports various large projects and programs in applying a systems approach to delivery. Having been part of projects that have struggled significantly because of lack of integration, his personal mission now is to help major programs improve their performance by placing systems thinking at the core of their strategy. Thijs has degrees in law and in business administration. In Australia, you would find Thijs the paddling around in his fishing kayak in the Sydney harbour before or after work. Having just moved back to the northern hemisphere, it will be interesting to see what kind of hobby would replace such a thing. Welcome to Railway Transportation Systems, Thais.
Thanks, Rahman. Very good to be
Really,
here, mate.
thank you. Oh, after reading out your intro, really, what is your new hobby now?
Oh, I think the jury's still out on that. My first hobby coming back to the Netherlands, of course, together with my wife, is making sure kids are settled back in school and friends and sports and all that. And, that takes a lot of time, but it's a very important thing to do. And I think by now, after a couple of months, probably good to start looking around for that new hobby. It won't be fishing, that's for sure. It's way too cold.
Yeah, agreed. So, my first generic question, can you share with us your professional story, especially railways?
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't grow up near railways. I grew up on a farm, and there was not a train inside for a long, long way. I think I studied law. That was basically because I couldn't find anything else that I would, specifically like, and either law or business are a good, general alternative. It gives you a lot of options. So I did that. And then in the end of the law school, I took procurement law and construction law as a specialization, if you will. And that brought me into the building industry. And I think it was by chance that some of the first projects I did in procurement involved railways. So that was, when I remember, was the first performance-based maintenance contracts in the Netherlands for heavy rail. And then I think after a while, after a couple of years being in legal consultancy and procurement, I got involved with the North-South line, doing the competitive dialogue for one of the bigger contracts. And that basically got me deep into a railway system. First in project management and then later in integration management, understanding all the different intricacies of rail. And that got me hooked a little bit. So probably that brought me into in the rail business. I would say, I think from all the people I've listened to so far in your podcast, Raman, I'm probably the least rail fanatic, if you will. So I'm not hooked. I don't have a mother railway on my attic yet.
No, anyways, you have brought a lot of value to the industry. I'm very grateful that you are in this industry. You got such a diverse experience and very different educational background. Reading through your intro, you did law. How does someone with a law degree ending up and managing railway projects?
I think, probably because a law degree, you'll see a lot of people with a law degree, for instance, in politics, because I think a law degree gives you a nice and wide view on, let's say, society and how things work. Because a lot of things, are regulated by law or by contracts or by agreements between different organizations. And I think what I find being in projects and especially rail projects, they are, say, dominated, but there are a lot of engineers. They call them big engineering projects. And I think it's very good to make sure that in an organization you have diverse views on running organizations and projects. So I feel that, with my different background, I can add that different view and value together with people with a more engineering focus.
I do agree with that. A very different thinking. Probably that's the reason you bring creative strategies. I saw your LinkedIn profile. It reads driving an integrated approach to complex project delivery. So, what makes railway projects complex?
Oh, that's I can probably talk about that all day long, longer than you'll have for the podcast, that's for sure. First of all, not all of them are complex, I would say, but what makes them complex is probably when you have various systems and technologies that have to work together. That's an obvious one. I think the main complexity comes from the amount of stakeholders that are involved and that have an interest in the outcome of the project. And I think like a railway will cut right through public space. They go through various properties of individuals, of other organizations, and of course they're funded by public money. So that means that they have a heavy impact on society and are influenced by public opinion and politics. So that creates like a dynamics that in project world is a challenge to manage, especially when your projects take a couple of years, and that's hard to manage toward a project. I think maybe in complexity, when we talk about complexity, I often compare that with a jigsaw puzzle. So like a complicated jigsaw puzzle is a big puzzle of the ocean, for instance. So a lot of blue pieces that you have to put together, and that's complicated. The complex part comes when it's not really clear or it's under debate what the actual outcome of the puzzle should look like. And that while you're puzzling, like the corner pieces start drifting. So the puzzle is changing while you're making it. And that makes the complexity. So it's more the organizational part and what people agree or not agree with each other to make it complex, and not so much the technology.
Okay, what an answer. So actually, when a generic thinking goes off, so we think that it's the ambiguity, uncertainty, and the unpredictability which surrounds around us. But so you explain what makes projects complex. So thinking on it, what do you think? What's the mitigation? How do you manage that complexity?
I think maybe staying in that jigsaw puzzle metaphor, I think for leaders managing complexity, I think an important thing is the ability to show people the big picture in a way that they can understand it. So, the box of the jigsaw puzzle, if you will. And that requires, I think, two things: effective communication, being able to, simplify complex topics in short, preferably visual messaging. But it's also, and that's the systems part, being able to understand the big picture. So looking at projects from a systems perspective. And so what happens in big projects, and this sounds simple, of course, but the bigger projects get, there's a tendency to lose sight of that big picture. And that, I think that has to do with, of course, the heavy pressures on the short term. You have to meet milestones and contract claims, and there is imminent issues you have to manage and risks. So it's hard for leaders to look ahead. You simply don't have the time sometimes. It's also, because projects get broken down into smaller parts, and if you're a program of works, they get broken down to separate projects. So having communication across those parts and between those projects, especially when they're, for instance, located in separate buildings, that is also a reason why the big picture gets lost. And the many disciplines and sometimes cultures involved in projects, it's people just speak different languages, both like actual different languages, but also like an engineer talking to a finance guy or a legal guy. They have a hard time understanding them, even if both of them speak perfect English, right? So they just have a different view of the world. So being able to paint the big picture in the context of what it is actually that you're trying to achieve. So what are the benefits and the outcomes of this project? What should they be? Also to your stakeholders. And what are the principles involved in delivering this project? So what are the things that we hold true no matter what? If you're able to articulate those and get them agreed to by your key stakeholders within your project, and being able to, report your progress, explain your difficulties in the context of those principles and those benefits. I think if you're able to do that as a leader, then you stand a good chance of keeping the ship on course and managing that complexity.
Wow. You have actually defined on something about shared goal. You also touched roles and responsibilities. I think that's really a productive discussion. So we touched about staff, about engineers and various roles. But when it comes to leaders, what are those most important attributes of successful railway delivery leaders today?
I think that effective communication, as I just said, I think that's an important one, maybe the most important one. But another one, and that's a little bit of a bugbear of mine, it is the ability, but also the willingness to learn. So what I'm always astounded about, and not just in railway projects, how little effort is taken in learning lessons from previous projects, either in the same industry or other industries. I think it's a big responsibility for leaders, especially again in projects funded with public money, to learn. So to really make an effort of looking what kind of risks have eventuated in other projects and what the strategies were to deal with them. And then try to create strategy to prevent those risks. I think the amount of wheels reinvented and mistakes copied that happen in our industry is just it's a little bit of a shame. I think I think there is a big responsibility and a big opportunity to create more value or reduce risk by just learning from each other. I think Ryan, when you look at like mega projects, like let's say Sydney Metro or something, or West Connect, North Connect, those kinds of projects, over $1 billion, let's say, I think they should have a chief learning officer in the board that makes an absolute point out of ensuring that, especially the pitfalls that other projects fell into, that they are avoided in projects that are being planned or executed at the moment. Because you can't really leave that up to other disciplines, because as I said, most of the time people are just too busy learning lessons.
I agree. What an answer. So you touched lessons learned and highlighted the importance of learning. But what I see is because we deliver projects and we keep doing the same thing, not adopting what you just highlighted. And for all these, we need a change to bring in the way we deliver the projects. But what I see is, what new habit do you think we need to develop so that we can adopt this easily?
Yeah, what I said, I think about the chief learning officer is not really a habit, it's just a structural mitigation. But often what we did in the digital systems program, because I think that the really strong point about that program is that the customer benefits, but also the project principles are very clear and they get communicated like actively and a lot. So when we would have like a big challenge or a big issue, we would discuss them not only time, cost, money, risk, but also in the context of the principles. So, what do the project principles say and what kind of direction do they point us in? I think to answer your question, a habit could be that if you run into an issue or you have to make a strategic decision or a delivery strategy or a procurement strategy or whatever, to ask yourself the question, your management team or in your project, do we see other usable examples of solutions or strategies that could, fit us, that have been delivered with success? So have we looked around? Have we got any inspiration or just direct answers from other projects around the globe? Because, as you have probably would have, experienced yourself, especially since COVID, the world is not a big place anymore. It's just, I'm in the Netherlands, you're in Australia, and we're just having it 7:00 in the morning. For me, that's no issue, mate. It's a click of a button to get those lessons. And what I do see is that every time that you reach out to anyone in a project, they are always very, very keen to be involved and to share their experiences. It's without any exception, it's always the case.
Brilliant. Amazing. I agree with you. When it comes to you from a professional angle, because I want to ask something about personal question to you, what do you like most about your work?
For me, it's the sheer amount of different people with different backgrounds, from different cultures, from different disciplines that are involved and that are required to deliver a large-scale project. It's so diverse, that makes it fun. I must say, that is a little bit what I already miss about Australia. Because when it comes to diversity, I think Australia is awesome. Just the amount of different cultures and people, different backgrounds. So that is already the fun part. But then for me personally, leading projects is a challenge to, try to influence and manage people towards, one similar outcome and a similar goal. And the more diverse it gets, the harder that gets, and that makes it a lot of fun.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I think an example I use often because it was fun. It was in Amsterdam at the North-South line. So we had an issue with the stopping accuracy of the CBTC system, or at least that's what the operator thought. That was an issue with the system. The system supplier was Alstom, so already a different culture, French and Dutch culture. They disagreed. They said it's a driver error. So, the driver doesn't stop accurately enough. And that became a tricky issue because it also, it eroded the confidence in the system a little bit, and we were far into integration testing. So it was one of the bigger issues. And the more we discussed it, the more people, got entrenched in their own position. And someone came up with a very good idea. Turned out to be a very good idea. They said, okay, let's make some kind of a contest, and let's challenge those drivers a little bit. We create let's say the driver of the week contest. So the driver that manages to have the most accurate stopping position on the platforms for over a week wins a prize. So that challenge was taken up by the drivers. So, it got went from ear to ear, and they were triggered a little bit. So, and actually over a week time, we saw the stopping accuracy improve significantly to a point that actually we could eliminate the issue because it was clear, what the issue was. So, we put some extra effort on training of drivers on stopping accuracy. So problem solved. That was creative, but, and the good thing, you could have thought that showing that outcome, the operator would be frustrated because they were wrong, but the opposite was the case. So they took that absolutely very well, also handed out the prize to their drivers because, in the end, and that was the good thing, especially in the last part of the North-South line, there was only one goal. So people didn't have an interest of being right. Everyone had the interest of delivering the system and delivering the outcomes to the city. So, it was a little bit of a creative solution, a very, people-oriented solution, triggering people to basically do the right thing. And that was the one we looked back on and said, it was so simple, but it was such a beautiful solution. Could have turned out that we tried to look for an engineering solution and made a modification to the system or whatever, and spent millions of dollars and delayed 2 months. But, in the end, it was just a simple personal intervention.
Interesting story. Very good. Lots to take in. And as we speaking on leaders and projects, let's keep doing this. It's really interesting. What do you think are the most dangerous traits in a poor leader?
That's an interesting question because normally the question is what are the important traits in a good leader? So let me think. I think it has to do with feedback. So I think a dangerous trait is for a leader to not ask or not listen to or not recognizing feedback that you get. Because it's very hard for people. It depends a little bit on the culture that you're in, but it's generally hard for people to give feedback to their leaders, to their boss, if you will. So if they do it at all, if they give you that feedback, which is important to get, but if they do, they'll probably sugarcoat it a little bit, or they'll hide it a little bit in subliminal messaging. So I think it is important for a leader to create a context and an environment that giving feedback to each other and also to yourself, create that environment is critical. But also you need to develop a good radar to recognize feedback when it's given to you. So a dangerous trait is to just ignore that or not having that radar. So that, when your team or when your environment's trying to tell you something that, it gets lost on you.
100% agree with your suggestions or advice. Feedback is such a critical thing. So being a leader yourself, what sort of a leader would your team say you are?
I think if you ask in Australia, they'll say I'm a crazy Dutchie. So, but I think charismatic and energetic, and I think a little bit opportunistic as well. So, you said before, you have some creative strategies. I think that's the case, and I have the tendency to say a push through a little bit. I remember that it was a good example. So when I did the tender for the digital systems program, because I came over not as part of transport for New South Wales, but part of one of the bids for the systems integrator. It was very clear. The message from transport in that bit was, because, digital systems is a European train control system. So lots of people came over from Europe, and the message was, we don't tell you what to do, you tell us what to do, because you're the expert. So after a while, I moved to transport. We lost that bit and ended up on the transport side as the integration director. And someone told me, because we struggled a bit at one point. Remember that transport said, we don't tell you what to do, you tell us what to do, because you're the experts. I say, yeah, I remember that. So, looks like they changed their mind, because the integration strategy, as you know, I think digital systems has a very strong integration strategy. At some point that was under debate a little bit. But then, my answer to that person was, let's change their minds back then, because in the end, that is what they asked us to do. So when things get tough, they expect us to follow through and not to, follow their leads, because in the end we do need to tell them what to do, because when it comes to the European train, there are lessons that we bring that have to be learned. So persistent, I would think as well.
Yep, I agree. I have seen you working. I definitely agree with persistence and being charismatic. So there are lots more questions I really need to ask you, but looking into the time, what we could do is let's do a quick rapid round. So my first question is, what's your favorite quote?
I think it's a quote from Roosevelt, but you're never sure about quotes, but I think it's Roosevelt. He said, complaining about a problem without offering a solution is called whining.
Wow. Please share an experience in which you presented to a group.
I remember that the first time I came to Australia, that was in the process of that bit I was talking about. I flew over, landed at 6 a.m. from Europe, so I was a little bit groggy and dizzy from a jet lag, and then went straight into a full day of workshops. So I was super nervous, new country, and I was very tired. And so I remember I went quickly into the hotel to drop my bags and grab a cab to an office. And I ran into the revolving door. Like I smashed into it because it went the other way than I expected. Because, everything is upside down in Australia or Europe, depends on where you are. So I took the wrong and I just smashed into the door. And I went in front of a big group right away, so thrown in the deep. And there were a couple of Aussies that I'm still friends with at the moment. Met there for the first time. And they said, how are you going? I said, well, I'm a bit nervous and my nose hurts. And I said, what? Why? He said, yes, just smashed into the door. It goes the wrong way. And that was like perfect icebreaker. And then, there was a big laugh. And then, there were all people in suits in that room. But then I found out, that you can put an Aussie into a suit. But if the joke is good, the ice is broken, then you'll have a fun time.
Agreed. Share a time when you dealt calmly and effectively with a high-stress situation.
I'll stay in that example because we had to present to transport and all day long. And my feedback afterwards was first a little Aussie quote I put in my black book was cool as a cucumber. So, I had to lead a workshop there, and that was, designed to be stressful because it was one part of the tender, right? So they threw all sorts of stuff at you, and see how the team deal with that. And especially, leader was targeted, especially, of course. And again, I saw there was a colleague of mine that is a very, very experienced program leader, like super experienced. And he was so jet lagged. He told me, you have to take over, mate, because I'm failing. So it was a very stressful environment. It was very fun. But, after, I amazed myself a little bit, stay afloat and keep calm. And then afterwards, it was actually Bill Palazzi that told me, cool as a cucumber. So that was a good one.
So before I let you go, my last question, what's your advice to the newcomers into this industry?
First advice is you picked well, because the railway is a very, very good industry. It's not only good because, it's future-proof and, you provide a public service in a sustainable way. So that's very important, of course, especially nowadays. But I do feel that the railway is an actual family. Right, so it is very good to see, how tightly knit that community is. Now, your podcast is a good example.
Thank you.
You don't really see a lot of these things. At least I haven't seen a lot of these things in other industries. Another advice is, so the railway is special, but it's not unique. Railway likes to think they're special. often, and that's just how we do it in railways kind of thing. But again, look around as well. Look, for instance, to process industry, because there's lots to learn. There's lots to learn about, when it comes to an integrated big projects. I think a railway has to learn from other industries because we're not unique. A project is a project. There are a couple of elements that make it specific for rail, but that's the minority. Biggest chunks of project delivery are the same in every industry. So learn would be my advice.
Thank you. Thanks for your advice, Thijs. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed discussing with you and learned a lot about project deliveries and leadership from bottom of my heart. Thanks for joining this podcast. Thanks for your time, Thijs.
Same here, Ryman, and a big compliments to you and your podcast. I really enjoy listening to it. You've had some very nice and amazing guests already, and it's a big honor to be in that growing list of guests.
Thank you. I believe everyone listening to this podcast has got something to take away from today's discussion. If you like this podcast, please listen, follow, and share this podcast within your network. If you believe we should be sharing your story or someone within your network, there is a railway leader who should be here sharing his or her contribution to this industry. Contact me on railway transportation systems at gmail.com. Thank you for your time today. See you next fortnight. Until then, stay safe and take care of yourself.